this brings us to the deuterostomes. Remember, these are organisms where the fate of the blastopore is to develop into the anus. And we have two phyla within the deuterostomes. One is Echinodermata, the other is Chordata, which is our own phylum. The echinoderms are secondarily radially symmetric. What does that mean? It means they evolved from a bilaterally symmetric ancestor. They did not evolve directly from the radiata, things like jellyfish and comb jellies and corals and anemones. Rather, they do have a bilaterally symmetric ancestor. What kind of evidence is there for that? One line of evidence, and there are several, is that they have bilaterally symmetrical larval stages. So, echinoderms, when they go through their development, they do have a stage which is bilaterally symmetrical. So that's one line of evidence, but there are many others as well that I'm not going to go into. So echinoderm means spiny skin. Spiny derm skin. All echinoderms live in marine habitats, oceans and seas, things like that. They have this radial symmetry that is 5-part or pentamerous, like think about a starfish. It's got 5 arms. They do have an endoskeleton, whoops, not an elloskeleton, formed of calcareous plates, or very small bones that are contained within a skin or an integument. So we call these little tiny bones dermal ossicles. Some species of echinoderms have pedicellariae, which are projections from the skin that have little tiny jaws on them that they can use for grasping things. Because echinoderms are radially symmetric, we can't talk about anterior, posterior, dorsal, and ventral as directions, but typically we can refer to them as having an oral surface and an aboral, or away from the mouth surface. So oral means the mouth surface, aboral means away from the mouth, and typically the mouth is on the bottom. That's where it feeds. So the aboral surface is facing upwards. They also have little bumps on the skin that you can use for sensation. They're called dermal branchiae. They also help them with respiration. But they don't have a sophisticated sensory set of sensory systems. They don't have a brain. They don't have. They do have nerves, but they don't see. They don't smell. They don't taste so much. But one thing about them is that they're relatively morphologically simple in terms of the number of types of cells that produce them, which means it's easy for them to lose parts, cut parts off, autotomy, and to grow those parts back, regeneration. So another thing that distinguishes members of the Echinodermata is they have this water vascular system. So they don't have blood per se, but they can bring in water and have sort of like a hydraulic system of moving around. So water enters through this structure called a sieve plate or madreporite. The madreporite leads through this structure called a stone canal into a channel that is ring-shaped, so it has the clever name of ring canal. The ring canal leads out to radial canals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 radial canals. And these radial canals have many of these structures that kind of look like little pipettes that are called ampullae. And the ampullae have a bulb in the top and sort of a lobe in the bottom, and water can be squeezed out of the tube, out of the bulb into the tube, and causing it to extend. And so this is how many echinoderms move around, is because they can pump water into these tube feet and use them for locomotion. So a good thing to practice would be for you to pause right here and draw a star and make it into a starfish with a water vascular system by drawing that. So, talking about our diversity of echinoderms, I think we have 5 classes or so that I'm going to hold you to. The first one are the Asteroidea, because they look like stars. That's what asteroid means. It means it looks like a star. So these are sea stars. You've probably heard them called starfish, but that's not a very good name for them because they're not fish at all. They're star-shaped, but they're not related to bony fish or cartilaginous fish. Members of the Asteroidea typically have 5 arms, or sometimes they might have 10 or 15 arms. Most of them are predators, so they will hunt food, like you saw in the video in lab. And then they have 2 stomachs, one of which is retained within the body, and the other of which they kind of can everse or push out through the mouth and into whatever the organism that it's trying to eat. In the lab, you saw a video of a sea star eating a clam, and it was able to lock its muscles with those dermal ossicles and basically just wait out for the adductor muscles on a mollusk, a bivalve, to fail, and then they can everse their stomach into between the valves and start digesting it before they even bring it into the body. So sounds like a horrible way to go to me, and it makes me glad I'm not a bivalve. Members of the Asteroidea have tube feet, like we saw in the slide with the ampullae in the water vascular system. These tube feet are contained within an ambulacral groove. What does ambulacral mean? Ambulacral means walking. Like an ambulance is a form of conveyance. It takes you from one place to another. That's where that word comes from, ambulance. It carries you somewhere. So the ambulacral groove is where the tube feet are kept on the oral surface. And that's how starfish typically move. They also have, within their dermal ossicles, mixed in there, some pedicellariae, or these jaw-like projections from the skin that can aid it in defense, can aid it in hunting. And they also have amazing powers of regeneration. So if you just had one arm plus a fifth of that ring canal in the central disc, and a whole new starfish can form from that. So that's pretty amazing. So here you can see some representatives of the Asteroidea. Here you can see a little bit of the ambulacral groove, which is just like a little line where the tube feet are kept. And I don't really see a good madreporite on any of these, but it's there. So all of these, we're looking at the aboral surface, or away from the mouth, and the mouth is underneath there. Class number 2 are the Ophiuroidea. Ophiuroidea means it looks like a serpent or a snake. Ophio means snake. Euro means tail, actually. And oidea means looks like. So these look like snake's tails. So it includes brittle stars, serpent stars, basket stars. And it is the largest class of Echinodermata. Often they'll have a central disc, which is different from the arms. The arms can be long and slender and more supple than what we see in Asteroidea. The ambulacral groove is closed off. They don't really need it as much to move around, because when I show you the pictures, you'll see they've got a lot of fine locomotory structures. They can grasp food with their arms and feed it to their mouth, or they can filter feed. and they use arm movement to move around. So this is among the most mobile of the phylum. And look here, you can see they've got all these very finely branched arms. Here's the oral surface of a basket star. Here's one that's more like a sea serpent, or what do they call it? A serpent star, with that central disc, and then these kind of long, skinny, and supple arms. So these are all members of the Ophiuroidea. Our third class is the Echinoidea. This includes sea urchins, sand dollars, and sea biscuits, and other members. The dermal ossicles, those little bones embedded within the skin, are fused together so that after they die, they leave behind a test, is what it's called, or a shell. Many of them have spines that they are capable of moving, hence the name Echinoidea, because they're spiny. They also have pedicellariae, and one of our representative species is Melida quinqueus perforata, or the five-holed sand dollar. So here are a couple of urchin tests. And you can see they've got this kind of vestige of an ambulacral groove. And the spines used to be all attached by these points. So this was a type of a pencil urchin, so-called because the spines are big like a pencil. Here's some sand dollars that are still alive. You don't want to, if you go to the beach and you find sand dollars, don't pick up the ones that still are alive. Make sure that there's nobody home and that you're just bringing home the test. I don't want to go killing sand dollars without a good reason. There really isn't a good reason. Here's a sea biscuit, which is another thing you might find at the beach. It's got that pentamerous radial symmetry. So these are all representatives of Echinoidea. The Holothuroidea. These are sea cucumbers, sea apples, sea pigs are also in the Holothuroidea. They do not really have as much of the dermal ossicles. So these are the ones that are sea cucumbers are eaten as a delicacy in some parts of the world. They have this extended oral-aboral axis. So imagine that you took a sea urchin, for example, and you just made it really tall and cylindrical. That is what you would be seeing in a sea cucumber. So in some, you have secondary bilateral symmetry. So they evolved from a bilaterally symmetric ancestor, as did all echinoderms, into a radially symmetric organism, which then evolved into a bilaterally symmetric organism again. So that's what we mean by secondary bilateral symmetry. Spacious coelom, so that body cavity, a lot of room in there for all those organs that they use to perform all of their functions. They have tentacles that they use to feed, and they have this ability to eviscerate themselves in defense. So if something is attacking them, they can actually eject some of their viscera, or their guts, through their mouth, or actually through their anus, and confuse or thwart a predator in that way. And then they grow back. So I might post a link to the sea pig video, or inject it in the video here, true facts about the sea pig. It's pretty interesting and funny. I'll think about that. But there's a sea cucumber. As you can see, it still has pentamerous radial symmetry, but in order to see it, you'd have to section it like this. Whoop, chop it in half, and you'd see that it has that 5-part radial symmetry, but it's become elongate. So you've got the oral surface on one end and the aboral surface at the other end.